Sporting news, college hoops columnist, Big Ten Network studio analyst, and NCAA bracketologist, Fox Sports' very own, NFL and soccer, all things sporting news. Our main man, Michael DeCourcy, joins us to break down March Madness. Michael, how you doing, brother?
How you doing, Mike?
Guys, how are you? Great to see you.
Hey, I appreciate you joining the show, man. I got another Fox guy up here, and Smitty, who works in the studio, obviously, with a co-host of ours, and then Shaun King, former Super Bowl champ, is here to shoot some questions at you. I appreciate you joining the show. What do you think so far? This play-in, the 4-in last night, North Carolina just absolutely waxing San Diego State, just a couple years removed from a final championship run against UConn and losing in that one. Now they just seemed like they couldn't score the basket. They couldn't play defense. North Carolina just ran all over them, beating them by almost 30. North Carolina deserving is my question, I guess, to you.
No, they were not deserving. And
I agree.
Don't take last night's result. That was somewhat predictable. I did predict that. I even have them winning their second game. The team that gets the most controversy on inclusion often goes out and wins a game or two, and maybe even goes farther than that. But you have to separate this opportunity that they didn't necessarily earn from what is supposed to be their criteria in order to get in. And the criteria, I've done the brackets for Fox for 5 tournaments. I've done it for 6 years, but we didn't have a tournament in 2020. So I've done this for 5 years, and in that period of time, there's never been anybody who did as little as North Carolina did in terms of accomplishment and still got in. They beat one team that was rated in the top 40 of any notable predictive metric, T-rank, Ken Palm, BPI, or the net itself, which the NCAA uses. Not only one team in the top 40 of those 4 metrics did they defeat.
Who was it? UCLA?
It was UCLA, yes. And let's remember, there are people now who are saying, well, gee, if we'd only made 1 more free throw, 2 more free throws against Duke, we might have won. And I'm like, yeah, but if Dylan Andrews doesn't fumble a basic inbound pass in the corner, you don't win that one either. So you can't do the what-if game. You have to look at what did they accomplish during the regular season. And they played a very, very difficult schedule. And they won almost none of the games in non-conference.
Right.
In terms of the difficult teams they played.
Mike, it used not to cut you out. It used to be strength of schedule was cool, but you had to win some of those damn games, right?
Well, exactly, and that's the whole point. I mean, I made a rhetorical point by going and looking at the standings for toughest schedule, and Mississippi Valley State played a schedule that was even tougher than Carolina's. They were the 3rd toughest. North Carolina was the 4th toughest. And okay, so Mississippi Valley State went 3-24, but if winning the games doesn't matter, then why not? So
let me ask you this, because I think what gets muddled in this, who gets into the tournament picture, is the actual conference tournaments. So why not do away with the conference tournaments? If the metric is the regular season results, then why not just crown whoever wins the regular season as the champion and do away with the tournament? Because North Carolina, in their opinion, if you're backing North Carolina, thinks that they played them way into the tournament by making the ACC title game.
But they didn't make the ACC title game, Shaun. They lost in the semifinals to Duke. Duke then went on.
My bad. Yeah, the Louisville. My bad.
Yeah, right. So they feel like they played their way into the tournament, honestly.
Right.
But first of all, by playing difficult opponents. I'm not disputing that. It was a very hard schedule. But scheduling is an art. And if you fail the art, then you fail the science. And they did not beat anybody that was significant other than UCLA. They think that they won their way in by winning 6 consecutive ACC games in February and early March. And let me tell you, those 6 teams that they beat in that period ranked on average 144th in the NCAA's net ranking, 144th. There is not a single team in the Big 12, Big 10, or SEC that's lower than 117th. So they were beating the rough equivalent of the middle of the Missouri Valley Conference, and that's what got them in.
Is the analytics trumping common sense at this point? I mean, is that what it is? Because I'm confused because West Virginia beat actual legitimate teams,
right,
and they got kind of screwed out of at least that spot that North Carolina got in as a play-in
right.
in the 4 deal. Is that kind of taken over?
JV, that's a great question. And here's what I'll say. On Saturday morning, when I went, the last week of the regular season, I do brackets every day for Fox. It's usually twice a week during the season, but then the last week I do them every day. So Saturday morning, I get up and I'm working on the bubble, and I get to Carolina and I look at their resume metrics, and they're okay. They're not as good as some of the other teams on the bubble. And then I look at their predictive metrics, the power metrics, and they're really good. And I circled it and I said, that's how they're going to excuse putting them in the field. And so I put them in my field on Saturday, and then I thought about it through the day. I was at the Big Ten tournament working for BTN, and I got to the end of the day and I said, no, they can't disgrace this thing that badly. They can't be that shameful that they would put a team in with that little accomplishment. So I changed it. I took them out. And what it is, it essentially comes down to that's the excuse they're using. But a year ago, Pitt had even better predictive metrics than Carolina does now, and also some accomplishment, but they didn't get in because the rest of their accomplishment wasn't up to what others had done that year, and they were rightfully excused from playing in the tournament. Carolina got in because they're Carolina, and some of that might have. It's hard to say. The way I look at it, relative to the fact that the selection committee chair was North Carolina's AD, is really.
I'm gonna ask you that.
Yeah, it's really less nefarious than might seem. I think it comes down to the 4 of us. Let's say we're really close. We like each other. We spent a bunch of time together, and you send me out of the room while you discuss whether you're ever going to bring me back on the show. And then I come back in, and you don't want to say, oh, man, Mike, you were terrible. We don't ever want to see you again. No, you say, oh, Mike, yeah, we'll have you back. And then you let me on the show again. That's what happened with Carolina to me, that they just didn't want to say to Bubba Cunningham, your team didn't get it done. It wasn't good enough. Sorry.
Even though he recused himself, quote unquote.
Yeah, that's standard operating procedure.
Yeah.
Well, Mike and JB, listen, North Carolina's already in the tournament. We got about over 100,000 people in the chat right now. I'm a Duke fan, so I'm definitely not a North Carolina stands. People are trying to fill these brackets out, Mike, and it looks like pig Latin. Who the hell is on Mississippi State as opposed to Texas A&M? Is Texas Tech healthy? In your opinion, give us some off the beaten path ways that we can get our bracket right in round 1, because I'm lost.
Well, Shaun, the first thing you want to do is you want to get the champion right. That's the number one thing. And there are some historic, very proven methods to do that. The first one is NBA talent. Every team that has won the national championship since 1988, my first Final Four that I covered, every team since 88. I'm sure some of our listeners weren't even born then. 88, every team has had a first-round NBA draft pick on it. Everyone. And there are not a lot of teams at the top of this field that fit that description. Does. Michigan State does. Probably Florida. Maryland does. There are just not a lot. Most of the players who are going to fit that description are teams like Oklahoma, it's a 9 seed, or Illinois, which is a 7 seed, or BYU, which is a 6 seed. So it really limits the pool of champions if that's going to be a qualifier. Either we have a new sense of history this year, or you say, I'm just going Duke because they've got 4 of those guys. I'm all in. And the other element that I will tell you is you look at kenpom.com, KENPOM.com. It's a subscription site. I think it costs $25. If you're really into hoops, it's worth every penny. If you're not, you can go to the landing page, and on the landing page, there are 2 columns that you want to focus on: offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency. And over the course, his database goes back to 97, and every team that's won the national championship since then, but one, over the course of a full season, has been top 20 offense and top 20 defense. So now some of the teams, like very few, but Duke in 15 came from outside that group. I think they were around 35-ish in defense. Got better as they went along. They made a lineup change. They got better on D, and then through the course of the tournament, got themselves up into that category. But most of them, they were already there because they're clearly excellent at both. And I will tell you, if you're leaning toward one or the other, and Shaun, you'll appreciate this because you're a quarterback, offense is more important. Defense is important, but offense is more important in NCAA basketball.
That's some great information and insight right there that I saw Shaun put out the notebooks. Make sure you take a picture, send them notes to me right after the show. Let me ask you this, Mike, as we look at this bracket.
Mike ain't give us no damn picks.
I know.
Mike's talking Ken Palm, and he's giving us the data behind the pick. Mike, we want the picks.
Okay.
What 15 is beating the 2? Like, who do we need to take in these 8, 9?
What does your mind say, Mike?
Man, Mike, we trying to win some money, man.
Well, I will tell you, I mean, we don't have time, I think, to go through all 65 games that are left.
Yeah.
But I
like
Drake,
the whole thing right now.
I like Drake to pull an upset over Missouri. I like BYU to do very well. I have them in the Elite Eight. I like their draw where they set up. I have my Final Four a little bit chalky, but I do have Michigan State, Florida, Duke, and Tennessee. I picked those 4 teams. I think I've seen a lot of other analysts who had very similar Final Fours, if not identical. So that seems to be a pretty popular direction to go. The 8-9 games, the one that stands out to me is Creighton, Louisville. And if they were playing in an empty gym, I would go all Creighton. And so this is why I'm not sure that I would suggest wagering on it. I think Creighton's a better team. But this game is going to be played 70 miles from Louisville's campus. I suspect in an arena that fits 23,000 people. I suspect there'll be about 20,000 Louisville fans there. It's going to be very hard, almost a road game for the Creighton Blue Jays. I still picked Creighton, but that's to me the most fascinating of all the 8-9 games.
Yeah, hey Mike, we've had some legends on. Pat Kennedy was on the other day, former Florida State head coach. Bobby Crimmins, former Clemson, of course, and Georgia Tech. He was on the other day. They all are picking Duke. Are we crazy not to pick Duke to win this whole thing, even with a little bit of an ailing Cooper Flagg, and we don't know how healthy he is. Apparently, he looks like he's going to get the nod and go, but I think he's young enough to recover. But it was a bad ankle. Are we crazy to anyone else? Like, I'm a huge Florida guy because I grew up watching UCLA when they had Tyus Edney in '95 and won it all. Jim Herrick's on the show for this Friday, so we're get to get him on. And point guard play has always prevailed. I think Florida has the best guard play, backcourt tandem in the country, the best guard in the country. I think eventually they'll outweigh the Michigan bigs or the Michigan State big or even the Duke big, in my opinion. And especially, you said Auburn, 14 of the 16 SEC teams are in this thing. Very interesting number because I think it's all watered down because of the portal, but that's a whole nother show. Are we crazy to think anyone can win but Duke?
Oh, no, not at all. I mean, I mentioned the teams that I think have the talent to do it. And I picked Duke because there's no doubt that they have the talent. And because they have a great mix, but they certainly are beatable. They've been beaten. In tight games, one of the concerns that you have is that they have not been in a lot of tight games. And how do they perform in those tight games? They lost to Kentucky late. They lost to Kansas late. They lost to Clemson late. And so you worry a little bit about that. So absolutely, it's defensible to go with Florida. They've been phenomenal in the last month, and they certainly have a great depth of talent. I like the fact that they got healthy by the end of the year. I like Walter Clayton. I think he's terrific, and I think he's done a wonderful job of transitioning to the point guard position from a guy who I don't know what his high school background was, but he didn't play that position at Iona much, and he didn't play it at all at Florida last year. And he became a first-team All-American playing there this year. Very impressive from him. So I absolutely – Florida is the team I have playing Duke. So I'm a believer in the Gators as well. And I think Michigan State's terrific. Tennessee, I don't know, has enough offensive ability to get over those last 2 hurdles, but I could certainly see them making it to San Antonio. So if you were to tell me that you thought Kansas was going to win it, then I might be
That might
questioning.
be a little crazy.
And my last question before Smitty and Shaun rally off some. I'm betting my money on Houston because of the odds and the money, and I still think they play full court, they defend, they're going to play you in your face the whole game. I just think that's the dark horse of this thing for the money. Now I'm just talking betting wise for the money. Am I crazy?
Well, they're an excellent team. They really are. I don't know that they have quite the talent to do it. I think they would be one of the teams that would break my precedent that I talked about before, but they wouldn't break the top 20 offense-defense precedent. They are, even though there are times when you watch them and you say, are they ever going to score another basket? There are also, usually in those times, you look at the opposite end of the floor when they go down to the other end to defend, and you say, that team that's playing against them will never score another basket. They are that good defensively. So I wouldn't put a lot. I wouldn't put money that I would miss on that. If you think you're getting a good price, they're certainly a very capable team. It's just that they do not fit in a lot of ways what traditionally has won. But I really like what they've gotten out of their point guard, the transfer from Oklahoma. He's terrific. And I'll tell you what, I will say this. In watching him, I keep thinking, why aren't they thinking he's a one pick? I really like him. I think it's Milos Uzan is his name. He's terrific. And so maybe they do it, and then all of a sudden the NBA guys figure out what I've been seeing, and they take him.
Mike,
to that point though, who's your biggest sleeper? Let me get one in, y'all. I ain't winning the whole time. I
got a Houston-centric question before we leave Houston.
Okay.
Lord Jesus.
Well, my bad, Smitty. So
it's all good.
Their best player was injured.
Yes.
For the conference tournament. Texas Tech had 2 of their starters injured. From an injury standpoint, I know everybody's talking about Cooper Flagg, but those 2 Big 12 teams, are they fully healthy now for the tournament? And then, Smitty, my bad.
Yeah, my information, I did not get as much information on Texas Tech, but my information on Houston is that it was very precautionary with Juwan Roberts. The boot was a caution that they just want to be sure because, first of all, they won the tournament without him, and they know what really matters is what lies ahead. They'd already won the regular season. They already had pretty much locked up a 1 seed. So they were very cautious in regards to that. And if they had lost to Arizona, it wouldn't really have mattered much to the accomplishment of their season. They wanted to be ready for this week and next week and preferably the week after. So, no, I don't think that Houston's in any danger relative to health. Smitty, you got to give me some questions because you've been waiting so long.
Yeah, it's all good. I mean, to JB's point about the dark horse, I just want to ask you this. When you look at the bracket, who's your biggest sleeper team? Like, if there was like 1 or 2 teams that could potentially shock the world, like what are those? What are some of those teams that come to your mind?
Well, the first one for me, I mean, I don't know how shocking it is, but I have BYU which is a 6 seed in my Elite 8. And I think they'll stop there because they'll play Duke. And obviously I've made it clear that that's the team I think is going to win it.
Right.
But that's a very capable offensive team. They have a lot of weapons. The Igor Demin, the freshman point guard I mentioned before, is fantastic. They've got a role player named Mawat Mag, who I'm very familiar with from my work at the Big Ten Network. He played for Rutgers in the past and is an excellent role player. I really like their team and what they've done with it. And I'll be honest with you, I was very skeptical of the hire of Kevin Young in the first place, but I was definitely wrong on that. He's done a very impressive job, and I think they could go a ways in this tournament. Illinois, I don't love the draw, but if they could put 3 games together like they're capable of, they can beat just about anybody. I don't think that I'm going to say they could beat Duke, given that they lost by 40 the first time around, but they can beat just about anybody when they play well. The problem is they take easy outs. They are a team that does not shoot 3-pointers well, and yet they take a ton of them because it's easy. It's a lot easier to take an open jump shot or a not open jump shot than it is to work for a better shot. And when they work for those better shots, they're really gifted. Will Riley, I love as a freshman wing. Kasparas Yakachonis, a freshman point guard, is really gifted. They've got to make better decisions. If they can decide to do the right things on the floor and fight through those those impulses to take the easy way out, I think they could win a couple of games here.
Mike, we're so excited to have you on with a wealth of knowledge. We're all trying to ask you questions, so we apologize for the order. I got to ask you something real quick on the sleepers, which are, it's crazy to say sleeper, but how much does experience factor into this as far as the coaches, like a Mark Pugh in Gonzaga, obviously two-time national champ, a back-to-back, and Coach Hurley in UConn. I think they're an 8. And then you got an Alabama team that's talented, and then you got a St. John's team, which Rick Pitino's done wonders with. Where are those 4 teams in particular, and how much experience do they have, along with the Izzos you already mentioned in this tournament?
Yeah, that experience does help, but it usually helps the deeper you go. I mean, we have seen Rick Pitino get eliminated back, I think it was 2011, by Morehead State, I believe it was, in 2011 when he was at Louisville. We've seen Mike Krzyzewski eliminated in 2012 by Lehigh, in 2014 by Mercer. Mercer beat them. We've seen those kinds of things happen in the past, but usually it does help once you get past that initial game, knowing how to prepare for the second round, how to prepare for the Sweet 16 is an asset. And I will tell you, the Gonzaga team is a really intriguing one because Gonzaga, I will say, from the beginning of the year till about the 3rd week of February, was one of the most vexing teams in the country to me. I thought their talent was better than they were performing, whether it was against the major teams they played in November, December, or even against the WCC teams that they were playing once their conference play started. I didn't think we saw the best of them. But then when they went to Vegas to play in the WCC tournament, I thought you started to see something resembling real Gonzaga basketball. And they handled a St. Mary's team that had beaten them twice very comfortably in the WCC title game. And that's a dangerous team now. They have made 9 consecutive Sweet 16s. So they know how to win these early round games. And they're in an 8-9 battle first up, and then they play a 1 seed the second time around. I believe their number 1 is Houston. Not having the bracket in front of me, I'm pretty sure from memory that's who their number 1 is. I'd be very nervous if I were Kelvin Sampson, knowing that with the Zags experience, there are several players on that team that have been part of that streak to some extent. And, of course, Mark Few's been there for all of it.
No doubt. No doubt. Smitty's Indiana. He's a state of Indiana, and the guy that got snubbed, I think, in West Virginia just took the Indiana job, and Indiana got snubbed. So I'm trying to figure this out. And West Virginia beat Gonzaga, didn't they? So, like, I think they did. So I'm like,
JB's been going all in on West Virginia for like the whole last 3-4 days. Mike. Like, he's really pissed off that they didn't get in.
Hey, Smitty, the teams they beat though, their resume is way better than North Carolina.
Yeah, but what do the fans want? The fans want to see North Carolina in the tournament. You know, the history. That's what the fans want to see.
Hey, Mike, I think it's because they hired Bill Belichick at the school.
So he's already had a positive impact, I guess.
Hey, so you got Duke, Florida in the finals.
I do, and I have Duke winning, and then my other 2 Final Four teams are Michigan State and Tennessee.
So Shaun's happy as a lark because he's a Duke guy and he thinks Duke's going to win it all. I think Duke's going to. I don't know. This ain't Krzyzewski's Duke. This is a new Duke. I'm curious to see how they get through this thing. I think it's going to be someone that none of us have, and that's just how it is. And that's what makes March Madness great, Mike. And man, we can't thank you enough. We have to do it again, hopefully, to get you on. I appreciate you jumping on last minute like this, man. It's truly a pleasure to meet you, and then hopefully we do it again.
I hope so. JB, Smitty, Shaun, it was a pleasure.
Yes,
you guys got a great producer, an old friend. So good luck with you.
No doubt. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.